We are live.
Perfect.
And we are now streaming on Facebook. Yay, we did it. Okay, welcome everybody. We are here. I'm Heather. My name is Heather McDonald. I am a board member of BPW, and I'm here with two people that I know and think absolutely incredibly highly of. I've worked with both of them. They are amazing at their job, and then all of a sudden, well, they're commercial property managers who just a couple of years ago, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, set up a co-working space. So Jocelyn Dupuis is I would say, are you the general manager of Adelin? Property manager at Adelin Property. So I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then Olivia Steeves.
Hi, everyone. So I am Jocelyn Dupuis, the property manager for Adelin Properties. Adelin Properties is a property management company. So we are commercial real estate developers. So we own and build and work on commercial properties, mostly in the Greater Moncton area. So like we're the big bad landlords that you hear about, and I don't think we're that scary. So I mostly run kind of the properties, and Olivia came on a couple of years ago, and she is the one who launched La Place for us. So La Place is our co-working space, and Olivia spends half her time kind of promoting La Place and working on the properties with me. So Olivia Steeves. Hi.
Hi, everybody. My name is Olivia Steeves, like Jocelyn said. And like she said, I spend about 50% of my time with Adelin Properties doing a lot of property management. And my other half of the time, I work on the La Place project, growing it, running it, and doing my best to keep positioning us well within the Greater Moncton, New Brunswick market. So.
Awesome. So I kind of want to start by going like way back. So last year, almost a year ago, it'll be a year, like 11 months ago, we were talking about, I was going to be renting space. It was going to be great because I was going to do some presentations there. Everything was going. You guys said, yeah, we've got people in everywhere. What were the first 2 weeks like after the world stopped last March?
It was crazy. For a couple of weeks before, so March 13th, that's the day. A couple of weeks before that, we had sort of, the whole world knew that something was coming and it was happening. So we had started to work on like cleaning procedures, on protocols for like how to do enhanced cleaning and should we do extra cleans. And we had kind of started to do maybe like a bit of an education for our tenants, like what is coronavirus? Don't cough around people, things like that. So we had been spending a few weeks working on that, thinking that, nothing was really going to change, but we would just have to tell people about coronavirus. Then all of a sudden it's like, it's here, everything's shut down. So at first it was really confusing because we had to figure out so many details really fast. Like if nobody's in the buildings, you have to lock the doors. So you have to make sure all the doors are locked, but then you have to make sure that people who need to get in can get in. You have to make sure that the cleaning that we had just completely increased is now stopped because there's no use in paying for it anymore. Then like a week in, we realized the mailman can't get into the building. So that was like, I think Olivia spent 3 days just trying to get to our tenants. Like, so the first 2 weeks were just complete craziness of just trying to like logistically shut a building down. But then at the same time, like, how are our tenants doing? Because they're all freaking out and they all have their own businesses. So they don't really want to think about how the building's operating. But then all of a sudden they're like, are we going to have to pay rent? What happens if we want to get into the building? Is somebody going to be keeping up with any of the cleaning? So there was like a lot of trying to figure things out. And the first 2 weeks were the craziest because even at that, we all had to go home. So we all had to like pack up our offices, set up offices at home. We're used to working all together, and now we're not working together anymore. So we're figuring out how to have Teams calls, how to ask each other questions when we're not in the same room, and things like that. So we're doing all of this at the same time. But then as we start to sort of figure it out, even the next couple of months after that was a lot of, okay, we have to contact every single one of our tenants and see, how are you? Do you need help? Can you pay rent? Do you need access to the space? And then we would go through it with all of our tenants. And the next day we'd get a new announcement from the government, and we'd call them all over again. And the next day. So it was constant changing and constant trying to figure out who needed what and what we could do to help them. How do you feel about it, Olivia?
It's really interesting to think about, actually, because we are a property management standpoint. We are a team working within an office, and we run a co-working space, which is like 3 total different levels of some connection with an office space, right? Like, you have to learn how to manage each of those scenarios totally differently, right? So Jocelyn hit the nail on the head with Adelin's scenario. It was really complicated just to keep everybody educated, I guess, educated in the same boat. When it came to La Place, at that point we had just about every single day all of our meeting rooms were booked. We were at maximum capacity at that point, and it's complicated when a large chunk of your business is meeting space, right? Like, that's more like, it's more fluctuating, but it's still a fair amount of your business, right? So that was our biggest change, was that we really had to shut our doors. And of course, luckily, the people who had, private offices in the space, they could still come and go if they wanted to. Like, that was something that we had discussed with them. But when it came to meeting space, everything was totally shut down, and we had no more traffic coming through this space. So,
which was scary, because
as the changes, like you said, the government keeps making changes, but the government is still kind of they keep learning from, oh, this happened, oh my goodness, okay, like, you understand how I do not envy anybody who decided to run in the last election without knowing this was coming, because they did not sign on for this either. So they're putting out new directives as they learn new things, as other countries, provinces, everybody does stuff. Are you still making changes to everything you're doing? Like, has that part ever slowed down? Has it gotten better, or just have you gotten numb?
I find that with at this point, at least each of our tenants, they've taken on, the whole COVID beast somewhat, which is helpful. When it comes to La Place, we haven't seen, we've totally changed our system for meeting rooms now. So when we're bouncing in between yellow and orange, there really isn't much of a change in our system, like on our end. Of course, though, the fear of, things shut down, meetings are canceled, right? So that our system might not be changing very much, but it's still up and down, up and down, up and down. So.
And so, like, you have to have an operational plan. So now you sort of have an operational plan, but it depends on which phase you're in, which operational plan it is. So we basically just have like 4 versions of it now, and this is the latest one. But then when they make changes, you have to make little tweaks to it and things like that. Like, we had the Atlantic bubble, but then when it closed, we had a tenant say, well, isn't it supposed to be New Brunswick? Like, oh, okay, we have to change that word. So little things like that. And you have to have the right signage at the door. So when you go to red, you have to change all the signage. So it's now not a big deal to us because we have it all in place. But the first few changes, it was like, oh, what does this mean for us? And how do we do it? Yeah. But now it's more about how people who are already in the space are going to react. People become more careful during red and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the pandemic has really changed everything, but I don't think it's changed anything in the way it's changed offices. Like, we go to the grocery store, we've kind of always gone to, yes, there's the arrows and there's stickers on the floor and there's stuff like that. You might wait outside, but it's not the same as the change, like the huge outflux into home, and then do we come back, who comes back, all of those things. So what are the biggest effects of the pandemic on office life that you could not have predicted, could not have expected, and that really surprised you as you were going along?
If oddly that I'm starting with a positive note on this, but I found that we never could have imagined that, like, before this, keep in mind I'm new to the workforce, right? So coming into the workforce, it really shocked me that not everybody was really on the same page when it came to like working Microsoft Office and understanding email and understanding video conferencing and like how to plug something in and all that stuff, right? We were totally on different pages for that. So something that, you know, I never would have expected. Same page. Oh, we're frozen. Our team is now all on the same page when it comes to
so it actually forced you guys to all get together and join Olivia in the digital age.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So that's a positive one. I think a lot of teams will benefit from that. And like for someone who advocates for a paperless world, I think it really has pushed us in that direction. So I'm thankful for that.
She's like if you print something, she is like not impressed. Why did you print that? Like she will calculate she's the one who counts the pages, so she knows that. So this was like fantastic for her.
This is fantastic. Yeah.
Nobody's printing out emails anymore.
Yeah. Exactly. But we had meetings of her telling us, okay, attach the file here, and we're all like, huh? It's great having a millennial on the team.
But we're lucky for that, right? It's a good shift. And then my other one was, it was a shock to understand, to see how many people actually worked really productively from home, right? Like, of course, you can argue both sides for that, but some people really struggled, but there were a lot of people that just thrived working at home, and they were happier. So that's something I never would have expected.
A lot of the studies show that people are really productive at home. And I think a lot of people probably didn't assume that people would be productive from home. Yeah. But
they're noticing now that it's more attached to personalities. So they are finding that extroverts just are chomping at the bit to get back to the office, but they may not be as productive there.
Yeah.
For the exact reason that they want to get back to the office. They want to go hang out with people again. Yeah. And introverts are just super happy that like nobody's knocking on their cubicle. They're just allowed to do their work and their day and be done. And those are actually things I hadn't really thought about. Nobody had really thought about that. Everybody thought working from home days were flex days where you're doing the laundry instead of doing your work. And when it's just this is now your job, this is now your office. We are much more resilient, adaptable creatures than I think most bosses thought.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And we actually do work from home. Like, I think, like you said, everybody was like, well, people really work. And it was this kind of weird, like, thing that might happen, but and now it's like, oh, okay, this happens and we're actually productive. So it makes you rethink office. But
see, I've been an advocate. I do work in an office, but I work in an office alone. And my staff doesn't want to. So I've been advocating working from home forever if they want to. Like there's office space if they want it, but nobody does. And that's one of the perks that I've had is you can work from home, just get your work done.
Yeah.
I've never had an issue.
Yeah.
I generally hire introverts by accident. I don't mean to, but I've never had that kind of issue. And I'm like, I know it can work. And hearing people say that humans just aren't disciplined enough and responsible enough to work without somebody looking over their shoulder. It's nice to see that being disproved in this time.
Yeah, very much.
So with La Place, like before you would walk in, it's this beautiful open space. There was was it the village that was?
Le village, yeah. And
the village was right there. There's this big open table that everybody could get. There's these semi-private, and then there's private offices. And then my favorite space is the circle room with all the windows. And when I think about La Place, I think about just the running into somebody and saying hi, the openness of the experience, the openness of the little whispered conversations going on everywhere, and the fact that there was generally food that was being offered to every single human who walked in that place. You were getting fed. So what would I see now? What are the big changes now?
We definitely, physically, we've definitely changed the layout some. I think I've been saying this ever since we came back. Like I started saying this and really realizing it mid-August. When we first opened La Place, our first 6 months to a year, we were just educating people on what the purpose of a co-working space was, and how it wasn't just for just the freelancer. It's not just for the solopreneur. It's for anybody that just needs some sort of different environment, right? So our first, the longest time, we were just educating people on that. If anything, COVID has gone and kind of pushed people into a corner that has shown them how useful a co-working space can be when it comes to finding spaces to be able to work. So with it, our space is definitely not empty. We haven't lost really any of our previous crew. Obviously, we've had some people whose leases may have ended, and that's just, it's just a couple. But we've also welcomed a whole new market, and I think we can give a lot of thanks to COVID for that. That's the biggest thing. So, and then beyond that, if we're focusing on the limits, so COVID has definitely, our meeting spaces, we now only have, I guess, our maximum capacity in our biggest room would be a 7-person meeting. So we can only welcome 7 people into the space. But if you think about that, we've kind of come back and balanced that out by, purchasing new video conferencing tools so that the experience is just as good, right? So, and with COVID, it's shifted people to do more meetings online anyways. So if you have half of the group in the meeting space and half of the people on our OWL video conferencing tool, then it works just as well. So it looks very similar, except for a little bit of a different setup so that people are more spaced out. And we've been able to welcome a lot of new people. So there's limits, but there's also a lot of really positives. So.
What about the social side? Have you guys kind of cut down on the times that you do the socializing? Or are you sort of trying to change that into something else?
Yeah, I would say yes. We whenever we would have new people come in, we'd have a breakfast, once a month, so that we could welcome the new members. And honestly, now when it comes to food, it's just kind of like it's a complicated thing to keep people, in line. So, or keep people safe, really. So, there's different ways to approach that and making sure everybody's still connected, but we haven't been able to do as much social stuff, definitely not. So
Olivia is really good at when people, like someone's new to the space, of making sure they're introduced to everyone and kind of made to feel welcome. But we can't have the full group gatherings. Like we couldn't have a Christmas party this year. Like last year, everybody hung out and had a potluck, and so we couldn't do that. So that's I think that's something that a lot of people are missing.
Yeah.
But I think people kind of feel welcome pretty quickly, that even our new people will just stop in the office and say hi to you.
Yeah.
So they don't get the same interaction, but they're still trying to make it happen. So that's really good.
So what do you think the new normal is going to be in the offices? Do you feel like there's suddenly going to be this glut of office space everywhere? Do you feel like we're going to all kind of go, let's go back to where we could have Christmas parties and do the social side of work? We are very much missing the social side of work. So do you see that coming back, or do you see us doing it in a whole new way?
Okay, so I could do this for 3 hours, talk about this. So you guys are going to have to stop me. But so the way we see it is going to be a hybrid, and everybody says hybrid, and that's what it's going to be. But a lot of the research shows that people working about 2.5 days, so 2 to 3 days a week from home, is kind of the optimal. Of course, that completely depends on your personality, the actual work that you do, things like that. But on average, that's 2.5 days is ideal. So what's going to happen is that I think workplaces are going to shift how they work in the office, but not necessarily what the office looks like. So, the big thing is what happens if I'm downtown and I have 10,000 square feet of office, and I'm this huge office and everybody's working from home. Well, we're saying half of your people are going to work from home and half of your people are going to be in the office, but the people in the office might need more room to spread out. or they might use the space a little bit differently, or the people that are at home are going to come in and use the space socially with people. So I think, you're going to see people downsize their offices or leave their offices. But I think overall, over the long term, I don't think it's going to affect the actual amount of office space that we see. It's really going to be how it's used. So like there's a trend that's neighborhooding. So you'll go into your office and then this will be the neighborhood where you and this group of people works kind of in that neighborhood to work on project A. And then this neighborhood over here is where people work on project B. So it's more about having like collaborative spaces. If you're going to work in a closed office with a closed door, you can work at home. So when you're in the office, you're working with people. You're at a big meeting room, or maybe you're sitting on a couch chatting with something, like just like how you love our round room. It's perfect room for chatting with people. So you're going to see the space used better for that kind of thing. And people, I think that's what people have wanted for a long time. They've wanted to have their work environment be more comfortable and be more creative and productive. And I think, people will say it's the millennials changing the way things are, but it's not a bad change. It's a good change to be able to sit in one spot for a few hours and then another spot for a few hours and have those meetings and have those collaborations. So if, I predict if you're kind of a big employer and you're looking for employees, you're going to have that kind of office space to attract the right employees. Because I've seen a couple of companies from Ontario out west who have come, to us saying, okay, we need an office space. We're not setting up, we're not moving our head office, but we now have a handful of people in the Maritimes. So we want a place for them to come and be able to work together once in a while. And I think that's the kind of thing that you're going to see a lot of.
So a lot fewer like cubicle cities.
Yeah.
And a lot more. Okay, so just one word you said in there, I was like, I did not think of this question until I'm talking to you. What do you think about how we dress at the office? I don't know anybody who's put on their dress pants. I'm slightly nervous about putting heels back on because I wore heels March 10th because I was on a flight in Calgary. It wasn't until I got back that they said anybody coming back now has to isolate. It was that same period of time. And then I wore those same heels again just one day as I was coming into here in the office, and it really hurt a lot. I didn't realize how unused to them I became, but office now we generally dress the top half of our body if we're going to have Zoom calls, and it's really kind of okay.
Yeah.
To be casual. It's okay to be wherever you want. Do you think that's going to continue, that we've gotten so used to being casual that going back to like suits will be weird?
Yes and no. Like, I don't know. I guess it kind of depends on the culture of your company and stuff, but I do think people are going to be more relaxed. And I think that's the shift that when the millennials came into the workforce, the shift that they started pushing was, I can work from home, I can work from a coffee shop, I can work at night, I can work in the day, it doesn't matter. So I think that was happening. And all of the kind of old school people were like, kind of, oh, I don't know about this. And this just forced it all to happen. So I think that people are going to want to come in their jeans and they're going to get their work done, and nobody's really going to say anything about it.
I think you could almost say that I've always thought that this pandemic has normalized embracing different employees' personalities, right? Like whether you work at home well or not, or whether you before it was you had the room, like higher ups had the room to question whether, oh, well, you know what, that's not really how we do that. Like maybe, I don't think you should work from home just because we're not going to be able to keep an eye on you. When now it's like, let's just embrace it. Let's hope for the best, where it's kind of, putting trust in people's different personalities, right? So maybe that goes along with the way that people are going to dress.
Yeah, I can see we've been forced to be flexible. And now that all of the employees in the world have seen that, oh, wait, you can be. it's going to be hard to go back for
Yeah.
those leadership teams to go back and say, okay, pandemic's over, back to just listening to my rules kind of thing. Cause we're like, oh no, this was a choice. This was, we've proven that we can handle that kind of responsibility. So that isn't, we are allowed to be more individual these days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are taking into account who handles stress well, who handles lots of meetings well, who can handle all of these things, because companies had to pivot so quickly and so often, as you guys have.
Yeah.
So we talked about one of the big things we are giving up in the new normal, and it's physical closeness. Like, I don't see physical closeness coming back until for at least another year. Like, we won't be the way we were, I don't think, in 2021. From everything I'm reading, at least, everyone's like, we're talking mid 2022, and then we're still going to be traumatized. So it might be even like after the summer 2022.
We're going to be traumatized. They say, the risk of more pandemics, of more viruses, like this is something that's actually more real in our life now. So will you ever feel comfortable like sitting close to someone? Like, it's going to be a while. So I think we might as well just, we're going to be distanced for a while. So let's embrace it.
Do you think there's anything else we've given up during this time that we've decided to probably continue giving up during the new normal, besides that idea of working like shoulder to shoulder with people?
Useless meetings.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So
could have been an email. Yes.
It's a twofold. We kind of at the very beginning had a lot more meetings over Zoom because there's so much changing and so fast. But I think it made our communication better because, we weren't sitting in a room together. We had a bunch of stuff to do. We're on a Zoom. What do you need? Let's do this. So it like made us a little more effective with our meetings. And then because we weren't kind of very good at Zoom yet, we weren't going to like Zoom every 10 minutes. So, you start emailing. So I think you don't have as many meetings, or you rethink, do I really need to have this in a meeting where it could be in an email? So that's been something that I think is, probably better. Not that less meetings is better, but
in my world, less meetings are usually better because you have those first like 15 minutes that are a waste and the last 50 minutes that are a waste, and there's a good 15 minutes in there. And I'm like, if we could just do that part. And on Zoom we do, because we don't really, it's hard to do small talk because every little square is lighting up, and you don't do that. So you get to the point and you are efficient in your communication, and you become a better communicator for sure.
We've given up some good things though, like you don't really congregate in the kitchen anymore is one of the things, that with La Place, usually at lunchtime, half a dozen of us are in the kitchen. Now you go in and you're like, oh, somebody's in the kitchen. Oh, I'll wait till they go because you're too close. So I think like that's kind of too bad that you don't get that water cooler talk as often anymore. That'll be nice to get back.
Yeah, definitely.
And a thing that we've lost is, so because we have had less meetings, we've really seen this is, first of all, we were cramming a lot of people into that room for a while, or we were having meetings in the event space, or just attending meetings elsewhere, right? You would go to an event with 50 people and walk around and mingle and network and do all that. And now you can't, that's really missing. So some people love it because they don't have to talk to anybody. But then other people are like, oh, I'd really love to just bump into somebody and see a lot of people at one event. So
we've been talking about that a lot at BPW, that we've been doing, like, we do these as often as we can with members and with women in the public, and doing this stuff of interest, and our meetings are trying to be of interest, but it's still all Zoom. And we did our last month meeting was our speed networking, and everybody just wanted to chat.
Yeah.
Like that was what we're missing now is not building our network. We're missing any sort of depth and connection. Yes. Like we just want to and the number of people that I will see and I'm like, oh, hi, I wish I could hug you. Like here's a COVID hug. Like you don't have that part of it, which even for introverts like me, you do get to a point that you kind of miss it. The first time I wanted to go out to third glass last week was the first time I was like, I want to go out where there's lots of people. I haven't wanted to do that in the last year, but I finally hit that point. I'm like, I can understand why people find that's missing. I feel like that's going to come back in a rush. Once again, you're going to see more introverts dancing on tables than there have ever been in the history of ever, just because it was taken away from us and now we want it.
Yeah.
So that's going to be, yeah. I really hadn't thought about how we've given up unnecessary meetings. That's a really good point, and a positive point. Again, like, this is one of those things that it forced us to get better at stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what lessons have you guys learned where you deal with tenants, you deal with tenants, employees as well, you take on a lot of responsibility? What do you think office workers need to remember and need to know through the next year?
I think, yeah, exactly. Like we still have a long ways to go. So my one word and my main word is just be adaptable. That's my only, like, if you're going to get used to where you're at right now, we cannot promise that next week it will be in the same spot. So appreciate where you're at, but be prepared to adapt, and that is the new norm, right? So you have to be able to adapt to things. So that's my main. You have to be adaptable, which, I mean, that's like it's a huge skill that I think every employee needs to have. But now it's like, as an employee and as just a human, right? So it's really testing us to improve that part of our brain. So
it was interesting at the beginning how many questions we had about how many people allowed in the washroom, like a large public washroom, not a private one. You know, how many people are you going to be letting in the washroom? How many people are going to be allowed in the elevator? Well, how long am I going to have to wait for the elevator? At the beginning, that was like a really big concern for people because of everything going on. But now, like, they just sit there waiting for the elevator all day. They don't mind. So like, at the moment of a change, it's scary, but they're kind of hopefully trusting us a little bit in running their building, that they're seeing that we're making things good for them. But if you don't like it, it's probably going to change in a day or two anyways. So like, don't stress so much about it. Just kind of keep going. We when the operational plans became necessary, I know a lot of people were really worried about it. Like, how am I going to write this plan? So this is like the kind of thing I do for fun in my spare time. So I was completely fine with it. But I could see that it was like really difficult for people. And my message to everyone was just start with the first thing. Who's going to unlock the door in the morning? Like, who's going to sanitize every hour? Just do something. Don't just step back and
just get moving on it. Yeah.
And ask for advice. Like, a lot of our tenants came to us and asked advice. We really like the relationship with our tenants. So we went to them a lot and saying, okay, do you have this? Like, we think you probably need this, but you probably haven't realized it yet. So we tried to do that. But even if your landlord, doesn't approach you, ask them.
Ask them, yeah. Create that relationship. Everybody's in the same boat. So you may as well, like, just communicate about it.
Yeah, we had tenants ask us things that we can't do, and that was fine. And people ask us things and we're like, oh, we hadn't thought of that, but sure, that's no problem. Mm-hmm. So just having that like constant communication with our tenants, and we say the tenants, but it's mostly all of the employees of the tenants that we see in the building.
That was actually my question, was how often are you speaking to the owner, and how often you're speaking to the people who are living it. Like, the owner may be able to work from home. Often they are the ones that it's the easiest for them to work from home. They're not frontline. So to remove an extra person from the office, they're going to work from home. So you're going to be talking to frontline staff most of the time.
And I mean, Olivia has been great at that. So Olivia goes and like checks on our tenant, like goes physically to the space and sees them and what's going on. We have a maintenance guy who's kind of always out and around and stuff. Everybody knows Terry, so he's always kind of paying attention to what's going on. So yeah, we at the beginning, a lot of our calls were kind of with the owner, the higher level, but we really made sure that we tried to get information from everyone. And Olivia's been working really hard on making sure that kind of everybody gets to feel heard, and and I guess we're not we want our tenants to know that they can talk to us, and sometimes we're going to say yes and sometimes we're going to say no, but at least talk to us.
Yeah.
And that's
That
a
actually leads to, there was a France, who's another member of our board, had asked a question. She said, so studies are still unclear on the best office format. And I know we've had this discussion many, many times.
Yeah.
And so much of the trends are based on the philosophy of the CEO or the philosophy of the owner. I want a big open space where everybody talks all the time and all the introverts go, or I want a completely quiet space or whatever. She's curious if you have thoughts on how to engage employees in helping inform decision-making and layout. So that's what you've been doing.
Yeah. So we've actually talking with clients who are existing, but we've actually been lucky enough to have some new clients. So we've been getting new spaces ready too. And I become not that I create their design for them, but I'm really involved in kind of their design and what the construction is going to be like and stuff like that. And we've actually had a few tenants that kind of were going in a certain direction. And we were like, I don't know, like this, I don't think this is the right one for you. So we really try to get them to like, okay, tell us what your day is like. Tell us what you do, but not just you, your employees. Okay, well, what does that team do? Does that team need to be close to that team? Well, why are they like that now? How come there's a pile of papers on that desk? Do you not have enough storage? So we try really hard to like ask a lot of questions as we go, so that they kind of think of those things. You know, we always recommend that the most people involved can in the design. I don't
has that been upgraded since the pandemic, like that side of it, where before it was just whatever the owner says goes, because it didn't used to matter, right?
Yeah.
It was personal preference, but now it's now it's a lot of everything.
Now they're taking our suggestions, and when I say our, you know, we have design teams and construction teams, they're taking our suggestions. So if we see them headed down a path, we'll either say, go talk to your employees about this, or we'll say, this is what the studies, or these are what the trends are. And we'll usually get them back. So that also comes with if you're a local tenant or part of a big national chain. So the local owners and the entrepreneurs, they will involve their staff much more than a national chain will, because that's usually a corporate redesign and everything like that. So that's a bit harder to push. But
yeah, in that case, the most important part is that it matches all of their other offices, and that the McDonald's, Big Mac, no matter where you go, kind of thing. So
exactly.
They might take your word now more, though, with the pandemic. Like that would even shift them to go, okay, so what is Atlantic Canada doing?
That's just it. Like if we talk about our local businesses versus, it hasn't necessarily affected many of our tenants, but we've seen that there's so many people who their head offices are in Toronto or in Montreal, and because of the state that they are in there, they implement rules here, and it does, like, New Brunswick's doing good, and they're like, nope, totally shut it down. Absolutely nobody in the office, right? So that is that's a polar opposite, which it's like, it is an educating position for us, but we, a lot of the time, because we're not, it's very different than working with our local tenants, but we can't necessarily communicate that as easily, right?
Yeah, I could see, and trying to communicate the fact that we are good, but we are good because we keep locking down. We're not good, so we're open. We're good, and we're very, very closed, would be something that people from Ontario would probably struggle to understand, really, the logistics for their front line.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
So what do you miss most about the before times?
Well, I miss interacting with my clients. So I just said, we're working on a few new clients, a few new ones have moved in, working a few other ones who are about to move in. And that process at the very beginning is very like relationship based. Like, you have to trust each other. You talk about a lot, and over the phone or on Zoom, it's just not the same. Like we just talked about construction, like, how do I, over the phone, try to explain that on this drawing, the column is at 6 feet, but if you put it at 7 feet, it would make all the difference. or whatever it is, right? So I find walking customers through a lease document, what all of this means, and then walking them through what the space could look like is really hard to not do that in person. Now, of course, you can't show a space unless you kind of video it and so things like that. But for me, I kind of build trust with my clients that way through the negotiations and showing them right up front, this is what we're working on, this is what the document says. And I find it really hard to do that over Zoom. So I miss that a lot. It's also about, I mean, you miss seeing people, everybody misses seeing people and things like that. But sometimes, like Olivia, when she goes to check on our clients and stuff, used to be able to just sort of pop in and just see the client. Well, now you're kind of like, I don't want to bother them. How many people are in there? And then sometimes they're not even there that day that you think, so you're trying to like schedule meetings and they don't really have time for you. And so that's hard.
It's a lot more, it's more complicated. Everybody has different rules, and like Jocelyn said, sometimes there won't be anybody there, so it's hard to make that connection. The connection is what is missed. And even going from like a Laplace perspective, we still have meetings going on and we still get to see new people, but it's nothing compared to what we would see pre-pandemic. What we would see before was, 100, maybe 100 is an exaggeration, but a lot of new people every single week, just because of who's coming in to have a meeting with somebody that we work with. So the connection and meeting new interesting people and just smiling at people and standing somewhat close to people and not making them feel awkward. And
do you guys find that you almost strain your eyes because you're trying to smile so hard with your eyes because people can only see them? So I'm like, please no, I'm smiling.
You realize you're smiling at somebody and they're kind of not smiling. You're like, what? And you're like, they have no idea. They can't.
No, they can't tell. Not at all. What do you think? Like we said, like it's probably not going to come back this year. We're probably still going to be traumatized next year, honestly. But where do you think office work is going to be in like 3 years? So if we go to 2024 and everybody's back and we're okay now, and it's February, do you think it's going to be a simple reset? Oh, right. This is what we are.
No. So a little bit like I said before, I think you're going to have that hybrid. You're going to have people kind of working in different areas. And I think the next 2 years are going to be a lot of trial and error with that, where companies are maybe thinking, oh, well, let's just send everybody home, and like, okay, well, they're getting tired of that and bring them all back. Well, that doesn't work either. So I think the next couple of years are going to be a lot of trial and error and what do we really need? And you'll see some of the bigger, some of the Googles come up with these really neat trends that will eventually kind of trickle down. So I think, in 3 years, you're going to still have people in the office. I don't think it's going to be a major change, but it'll be more purposeful when they are in the office, and they'll be kind of more specific about what you're doing in the office when you're in the office.
I think
it's office.
The need for space may not change. It may some, but not a significant amount. But the way that it's used will change.
I read something that said, like, for some reason in 1918, it didn't really change a lot, probably because power dynamics were different and there was just so much different in the social strata at that time. But now, I mean, a year ago, none of us could imagine doing a mask load in the laundry and like weird things like that. Like you have to get your kids' gym clothes ready and their masks ready and they're this and they're, it's kind of bizarre. And we'll never unlearn that. We will never unlearn the abject confusion of like May 17th of March 17th of last year.
Yeah.
We will never not have lived through a pandemic.
Right.
At this point. And whether there was going to be another pandemic, whether it was going to be big or small, whatever it was going to be, we can't unknow that this can happen now. So it probably will, especially for millennials as they are growing into more management roles. It's going to affect how they feel about their workplace, how they want to work, where they want to work. And that COVID, non-COVID, like we've been doing events now where we have a COVID plan and a non-COVID plan, because we don't know if everybody gets vaccinated, will stuff in October, November, December of 2021 go on? Pretty much sure it won't, but we do have that plan in there because everybody does want connections so badly. So people probably, when they're making making an event with two different options is a lot easier a decision than setting up an office space with two different options. They're going to set up the one that's going to work during a pandemic.
Yeah.
The one they had didn't work during a pandemic. Oh, shoot. Now we have to rethink all of this. And even in, I'd say 5 years, somebody in the room is going to say, okay, so what happens in a pandemic? Because you have to plan for it now.
You're definitely going to see shorter leases. So like, back in the day, the heyday of, commercial real estate, you'd see a 10 or 15 year office lease. We're taking this whole floor. We're going to be here for 15 years. Now I think people are going to struggle to say 5, because I don't know what's going to happen. And whether, my business itself, how will it survive? Because I don't know about the world. But even if it survives, what's it going to look like? So landlords are really going to have to adapt to the client's needs. It's really going to become, okay, how comfortable am I as a client, as a tenant, to sign this lease, and what do I need in it? And I think both sides will compromise. Back in the day that you would come in and you'd have brass everywhere and marble everything and everything fancy. We won't get that anymore, because you can't guarantee how long you're going to be there. But did we need that in the first place? So like you'll see kind of the really important things stick, and kind of everything else will kind of sort of get washed away.
And people might be more concerned about how easy things are to clean.
Yes.
Rather than how pretty they look. Will this survive, 17 times a day cleaning? There are some really beautiful materials out there that just won't last given that kind of use.
Yeah. And a little bit what you're saying before, with the millennials and as they take on more leadership roles and stuff. The other thing that I find interesting, so I have like 17 and 19-year-old. So I think their demographic is like watching this happen to us. And they're kind of like affected through school, but not fully. And I think they're going to like also make a big change when they go into the world, because they're going to know, they're going to remember what the pandemic did to their families and how they lived through it. And they're going to make some pretty big demands, I think, too, of what they want out of their workplace. And if their bosses are millennials, then who knows what will happen.
Yeah.
It's going to be a free-for-all. I mean, the kids right now, my two oldest are 16 and 14, and they're going through the hybrid education.
Yep.
They have learned so many skills during hybrid education. And every time they're upset about it, I'm like, welcome to university.
Yep.
Nobody's getting you to go to school, university. You have to remember your schedule. You do have to check in. You have to be there, and you have to work a lot independently. We are not taught that as high school students. I wasn't.
No.
I got to university. I'm like, what do you mean? There's no teacher reminding me I didn't pass something. Like, what's going on? This is weird. And that's now we've expected now 14-year-olds are able to pull that off, no problem. And yes, it's a struggle, but this is a good time to have that struggle, because university, it's an expensive time to have that struggle. In the workplace, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to be like, well, what's my job security if we all go home? I want this written down that I know what's going to happen to me, because next time around, if it's soon, there may not be a lot of government support left.
Right.
We may not have a full year of money left to give people who are unemployed. So that becomes another area where employers will be required to keep people employed. However you do it.
And that's been the big thing through this whole thing. Do I have so much money, do I spend it on an office space or not? So that's what we've been, at the very beginning, we were like, this is bad. But I think I think it still comes back to, especially at this point, we see that people need the social aspect of work.
Yeah.
They need that culture. They need that. So, at the beginning, I think landlords were really nervous about, a mass exodus. There'll be some fluctuation, but still, people still need something. So it'll still exist. And it's up to the landlords to adapt to that as tenants need it.
So I think that's probably going to be a perfect lead in to the final question. I want to thank you guys so much for doing this first, but I really want to know, what are the biggest, you've been on every side of this. You are employees, you are employers, you are landlords, you are also tenants in these buildings. You are everything in this world. What are the biggest takeaways you've had as somebody who provides office space and the way we work? You provide the way we work to local businesses. What are your biggest takeaways of the last year, if you could summarize them?
Oh, I'm here thinking about all of our local businesses. Part of me was like, okay, Olivia, name off every single local business. You could do this, give them a shout out. But if I do that, what if I miss one? That would not be good. Maybe Jocelyn and I combined could make it happen, but our biggest takeaways, our local businesses, and really this applies to all the local businesses in Greater Moncton. You guys are absolutely incredible. Everybody has had to adapt, but when it's a local business that has, it lives and breathes their entire business every single day. This pandemic really could have. This pandemic was very scary for everybody, but especially them at times, right? So biggest takeaways is that our local businesses are strong and they are adaptable. And if we are not, we need to give them more credit for what they have gone through and done this year. I know that we've celebrated them so much, and I hope everybody is giving their love local to as many different businesses as possible, but we can never celebrate their successes this year enough, because it was not easy. So that's my standpoint.
It's their ability to pivot. So every company, everybody everywhere has had to pivot, and we think we're a local company, and we have national tenants, we have local tenants, but it's really everyone, how quickly that they were able to adapt and figure out how they were going to do it. And we had a lot of conversations with local tenants saying, okay, well, now I want to sell online. How can you help me? What can we do? And things like that, right? So do we expand the store? Do we make the store smaller? How do we do these things? And it was easier for our local tenants to make those quick changes than our big national tenants.
Yeah.
Because there's a big wheel somewhere is making those decisions.
And I can't help but think that these local tenants, they have such a stronger connection with their client base here, right? So they know exactly what they need. So if they're going to jump into that decision, they can do a pretty calculated guess because they know their people so well, right? So,
and we totally see ourselves as the partner to them. So what do you need? And we were having calls with them. Okay, rent is due tomorrow. Before we go and take the money from your account, can you afford it? We're able to go to everybody and say, what do you need from us to make this work? Because we don't want to see you fail. So it comes back to that relationship and really just knowing who, for us, our clients are tenants. So maybe, clothing store, their clients are a mom with kids, but it's knowing your client and really being adaptable and really just think outside the box, do something, try something.
That is, so are there any other things about the future of how we work that you think we need to really go away and start thinking about? Or do you think this is we've pretty much settled into what it's probably going to be?
I mean, I think we've settled in. I think my biggest thing is we've actually been fairly busy with people calling us about office space. And everyone's always wondering, how does it work? How does it work if maybe it's somebody who's ready to start that new business because all of this and they're ready to do it. Yeah. How does renting an office work? And What does a lease? Do I have to sign 10 years? How much money do I have to put in? Like, talk to a lot of different landlords and get a good feel for not, how they treat you, but for what their answers are and how flexible they're going to be. You know, we had a mortgage to pay too. We couldn't just give free rent to everybody. Like, we couldn't do that, but we could at least be there to listen. So there's a lot of people who are kind of thinking of, now's the time to get that little store, little coffee shop, go out on my own as an accountant. Kind of do your research. So talk to a broker, talk to a landlord, talk to somebody who has a lease and say, what is it? Because I think there's a lot of possibilities out there. There's a lot of good spaces in town. Just don't jump into anything unless you really kind of have a good idea of what's going on.
Yeah.
All right, with that, I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you again. I cannot wait to see you guys. When I might just I feel like I can't even drop into La Place because I used to just drop in and be like, hey,
Yeah.
how's everything going? And
You could do that.
now I feel like I'm taking up somebody else's room. Everywhere I go, I feel like if I'm here, that means somebody else can't be here. But it'll be really nice to see you at BPW meetings when we can all, physically be there. I mean, imagine consuming food next to someone that you're not related to by blood or marriage. It's
right.
Flowing. It's going to be so great.
Great. The little things.
It is the little things. Thank you so much for doing this tonight. Like I said, there's a couple of questions and comments. People will have them in the coming days. So if you guys want to jump on, and thank everybody who did join us and was watching, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.